So I thought I'd head out here to the public course, and it's been kind of raining and cold and cloudy and not too many people around, so I thought it would be a good time to just roll a few across the green here and take some videos and just while I'm going to talk about putting, at least there's something here to look at, and it's me just rolling these balls across the greens that are far from perfect. So anyway, let's get into it now. I usually don't talk a whole lot about putting because advanced ball striking is just that, advanced ball striking. But putting is striking a golf ball as well, and obviously it's a very important part of the game, as we all know that. About 50% of the game. So I was playing recently down at Cypress Point and just rolling the ball really beautifully on the greens. I don't really play much anymore, but when I do get out on a great track like that, I'm forced to hit some putts, and I don't practice at all. I don't think I've practiced out on a green for a couple of years, and I was just really amazed at how well I was rolling the ball out there. So I thought, well, maybe I'll go over to the local public course here and bring the camera, and my fishing buddy, Josh, came out and helped me out and just held the camera a little bit. And so I just picked a 20-foot putt and just 3 or 4 balls, rolling them, and rolling it really nicely, and just to show that, putts can be made. When I'm putting well, I feel like I'm anything inside, 20 feet, somewhere in that range. If I'm putting well, I almost feel like, 50% of the putts I can make, which seems impossible if you consider that the greens are, public greens, a bit bumpy. These greens had been punched not that long ago. We're definitely not rolling true. But I've found that if I'm really rolling the ball well, I'm going to make putts on bad greens, even sanded greens or anything. And I was always amazed when I was playing a lot, when I was younger in junior golf, college golf, even at professional golf, how many putts a guy could make when they're putting well, and it just seems almost impossible. But a lot of it is technique. So just kind of cycling back, my story, I think I felt like I was a pretty good putter when I was in junior golf. I just kind of, I didn't really have any technique. I just putted like a kid, there's the ball, there's the hole, and just kind of rolled it. As I got to college, I hit that level, and there were guys putting a lot better than I was, I felt. Even guys on my team were definitely better putters than I was, but I was a much better ball striker than most of the guys, so I made up for it there. And had a pretty decent college career. When I turned professional, another level, and the guys out there are the guys that can putt. I mean, if you can't putt, you're not going to be winning on the tour. You're certainly probably not even going to be on the tour. Everybody's out there has to be at least a decent putter, but there was another level, a skill set there that I just wasn't aware of. And I felt like I was giving up 2 shots around to some of these guys, which would be 8 shots a week. And if I took 8 shots off every tournament that I played, I would be probably a household name. The ball striking wasn't really the problem so much for me. With the putting, I definitely felt like I was in the lower percentile there. The ball striking, I was, felt like I was in the 75 to 80 percentile of strikers, and putting, I felt like I was down in the 10-20%, down at the bottom. So that being said, I retired, didn't play for a long time, and when I started playing again, I just kind of fell in love with the Mare Island golf course up in the Bay Area, and I just went out there and played, and was putting. And after not playing for 13 years, my putting was absolutely just atrocious. It was just terrible. My ball striking was pretty good, and then it got a lot better as I was playing a little bit more. and then was working on some of the technical stuff that I'd wanted to do years and years ago. Didn't really have the time to do it when I was on tour because you're having to, there's always a tournament coming up and you couldn't really make radical swing changes and stuff. So I just went ahead and did all that. But the putting was just bad, really, really bad. So the big aha moment was I was out playing with Al Barkow, the famous sports writer, is one of my very dear friends. And we would play a lot of golf. And one day out at Mare Island, he said, "John, you're such a good chipper." He goes, "I'm surprised you're not a good putter." And I was just putting absolutely atrociously. And he said, "I'm surprised you're not a good putter because most of the great players that were great chippers were also great putters." And I just kind of thought to myself, maybe there's something to that. And, I had to kind of take, a look at my technique chipping, and it was very different than what I was doing putting. So I thought, well, what if I just use the same technique, my chipping technique, and I just turn that into a putting technique? Because it couldn't get any worse. So that's essentially where my journey started, to where I became, a decent putter. I think putting, if you have good technique at anything, you shouldn't have to practice a whole lot. I mean, yes, you do need to practice some, but I can take off long periods of time, not be on a golf course, and tee it up and hit the ball, pretty well. And playing Cypress Point recently, I've hadn't been on a course in over a year, and went out and hit first 8 out of 9 greens, until I blew out my foot with a blister or whatever, which is a whole other story. But just to be able to go out and strike the ball well and be able to hit it, pretty good from not playing. I think the same thing should be true with the putting. If you have good technique, you got to be able to roll the ball pretty well on the greens and get it done. At least, to me, putting is, when you hit the putt, you want to feel like you hit it good, and the ball should look like it's got a chance. I like to feel like every time the ball's coming off the blade, it looks like it's going in. Maybe it lips out, maybe it doesn't, but it looks like, if the pace was a little better or something, I could make this putt. What you don't want to do is be hitting putts, and right when you hit it, that it's got no chance. Oh, that was bad, and that's where I felt like I was doing that a lot, almost all the time. So, getting back to the technique changes, really to just step back and say, what is really going on with putting, and just getting rid of all the preconceived things that we're all taught that, you're supposed to, putters they're light and the shafts are whippy, so you have good feel, and they tend to be upright because of the pendulum concept, and you try and keep the face square to the target line, to eliminate any, deviations there. The square grip on the putter. So yeah, the whippy shaft, upright, square grip, lightweight, and then you use a different grip. You don't use the same grip that you do hitting a driver. You have a putting grip, right? So you're supposed to do that too. But why all these things? Why is everything so different? And I thought, well, as I'm getting closer to the green, my clubs get shorter, but the heads get heavier and the shafts get stiffer down into the long irons because the heads are heavier, so you have stiffer shafts. But then I get on the green, and my caddy, or I'm pulling out of my bag a club that's completely foreign to me. I mean, nothing like I've been using from tee to green at all. And the club's much lighter. I mean, my wedges are heavy, the shafts are stiff, and I get on the green, I have this lightweight putter with a light, whippy shaft. And I'm going to be gripping the club differently and standing differently, taking rocking my shoulders more up and down rather than flat or whatever, and all these things. And I thought, well, I don't do that when I chip. So when I chip, I'm just basically hitting a little golf shot. I have the same grip. I use the same grip on the club. I have a round grip on the club. I grip the club the same as I do with hitting a driver or a 1-iron or a 5-iron. And I thought, well, what if I just put a round grip on the club and I just use the same grip I do with a driver or 1-iron? So I just grip it the same, club feels the same in my hands. That would be a start. And how about flatter lie angles like I have on all my clubs? Why am I all of a sudden having this upright club when I've got I'm playing off 6 degrees flat? Why don't I do that? Why don't I have the club the same length as, say, a pitching wedge or a sand wedge and make it the same weight as my wedges? And I play my wedges about 18 ounces. So, and then with my chipping, the way that I stand to it and address the ball and all that, and the way that I would move the club back. So I basically took a heel shafted club because putters usually are you have center shafted and face balancing and all this stuff. And I thought, well, I'll just make it like a golf club. So I went with a heel shafted, just like the rest of my clubs are all heel shafted. So I personally used an old Tommy Armour Ironmaster because it looks like a golf club, basically, with a flat surface. And I altered that a little bit with the setup. I mean, how I would set the club up, and added some loft to it. So when I put my hands forward, it squares it back up relative to the golf ball. And then the takeaway, coming into the ball in the 430 line, coming from the inside is what I'm trying to do when I'm certainly hitting shots and even chipping. Never really like to go outside and cut across it unless I'm hitting some kind of specialty shot or something, but still would like to have the club coming inside and opening. So these concepts started kind of banging around. I made this club and added some weight out on the toe of the club. So I put a big chunk of lead out on the toe, and I did that to make it feel like maybe I'm chipping with an 8-iron or something, because any of the short irons are certainly much more toe heavy than even the long irons, so that the club would actually feel like a golf club in my hands. So basically, then I just put this thing together and set it down and just basically approached the putting exactly as I would hitting a chip shot from, say, 20 feet or 60 feet or whatever. And the shocking thing was, immediately I was rolling the ball beautifully. Just the ball's coming off the club face, rolling beautifully, and essentially putting kind of a hook spin on it. And to me, a good putter that really rolls the ball well is going to be able to make putts on bad greens. And I always liked bad greens when I was on tour, because I knew that half the field was eliminated. They were going to be complaining about the greens and they were done. And so I thought, anytime I would show up to a tournament and have bad greens, like, okay, this could be a week for me, because now the good putters are going to be missing a lot of putts because the greens are bad. They're going to miss putts. And I knew I'm going to miss putts anyway. Another thing psychologically for me was that on bad greens, if I hit it a little bit right of the hole, left of the hole, it might hit a bump and kick it into the hole. But on good greens, if I send it offline, it's not coming back. It's like putting on a pool table. You mishit it, it's gone. It's not coming back. So there's always that kind of hope, like, okay, I can hit a bad putt, maybe it'll hit something and kick and go in. This tends to drive the good putters crazy, and you hear them complaining about the greens all the time. But on the bad greens, I felt like, okay, I'm going to make some putts on bad greens. The good putters are still going to make more putts than me, but they're not going to make as many more putts. I'm not going to see a guy just run the table and make every single putt inside 20 feet all day long. It's just not going to happen on bad greens. So I felt like maybe the 2-shot advantage per round was maybe just like 1-shot advantage on the bad greens to a good putter. So I felt good about that. But if you look back at historically, if you watch the old Shells matches or even the vintage Masters footage, you'll see those greens at Augusta were slow and bumpy, not very good, like in the 60s and stuff. It's really bad. Almost looks like putting on the tee boxes. But you would have guys rolling it across those greens and making some putts. So it is possible to make putts on less than perfect greens. And I think most of us are playing on less than perfect greens. If you're playing public golf and greens aren't so great, yeah, a lot of us are playing golf on greens that aren't so great. And I like to think of golf as an outdoor game and not a game that's based upon perfection, or that the course has to be in perfect conditions and the greens have to be perfect, or else I'm going to just be complaining all day about the conditions. Um, Golf is about adversity, and greens that aren't good, uh, that's okay. It's part of the game, and as long as they're not too bad or whatever, most golf courses have lawnmowers that actually cut for greens. It's not like in the 1800s or whatever when it was just goats or whatever out there. There were no greens, and you're just putting on the soil or whatever. So, in that sense, I think golf is an outdoor game. It's not perfect, and what you want to develop is a technique to where you really get that ball rolling across, less than perfect greens. If you can get that ball coming off the face with a little bit of hook spin, it's going to really roll out better, and you're just going to make more putts that way than if you're cutting across it, or even coming square to square, and the ball starts kind of hobbling around right when you hit it. Really uh, can get offline quick. So anyway, that's kind of where it's at. So I immediately became a decent putter with really not having to practice at all. To me, it's really about speed and pace and reading the greens. I'm a pretty good reader of greens. If I can read the greens well and hit it at a decent pace, then I don't really want to worry too much about the ball coming off the face irregularly. And so by using a different methodology, basically like a chipping stroke, it really made a big difference. And I'm quite confident now when I go out and play that I'm not going to completely embarrass myself. I mean, I can go out and roll the ball pretty well. So, here I'm just, out at the public course, just rolling these putts. And, you can see that, it is possible to make some putts and roll the ball pretty decently with this kind of a technique. And I just kind of coined it as chip rolling, like a chipping stroke, but you're rolling the ball. So it's kind of a chip rolling technique. And a specific kind of a club, but it's not really as far out of the box as it seems, because who used flat line goals? Well, maybe not a lot, but Isao Aoki was a guy, one of the great putters of the 70s and the 80s from Japan, and he almost won the U.S. Open one year. But he would have his hands really, really low, and he was using the same principle of flat line goals, to where the flatter the line goal, the more it has to do with trajectory and not direction. You start getting really upright, and you start having difficulty controlling the rotation of the shaft, and then it has all about direction. But if you go flatter, it has more to do with trajectory, not as much with direction. So that's something that he latched onto. Was one of the great putters for sure. Isao Aoki had a wristy stroke. So again, you're supposed to not use your wrists, and in this method, use a little bit of wrists. Turn my shoulders level. Who turned their shoulders level? Ben Crenshaw, one of the great putters. He had very level rotation, and the club face came inside, and that face opened up a lot, and he really hit it kind of with the right shoulder and the right hand, and his knees would move a little bit, had a little bit of wrist. And then, of course, the great Bobby Locke, and everybody, from the previous generation would talk about Bobby Locke was the greatest putter from South Africa, and he took it way inside and just put a ton of hook spin on it. And the greens were bad back then in the 50s, and he was the guy who just dominated on the greens. And he used a wristy stroke, took it inside. Applying that methodology there too. Lauren Roberts was considered one of the great putters, of the 1990s, I guess, into the 2000s, and he had an 18-ounce putter. I think that's what I remember reading about Lauren Roberts. He had, they called him the boss of the moss, and heavy putter. Not sure about Tiger's putter, but I've heard that Tiger had a very heavy putter too. So, there's something to having some weight, being able to feel the head. So again, these are all concepts that are not really so foreign. I went ahead and put a stiff shaft in my putter because of the heavier head, flatter line goal, and then just using the body as I would hit regular golf shots, turning level, coming inside, 430 line, all of that stuff. A little bit of wrist. Of course, I'm using the wrists when I'm striking golf balls. So that's kind of some thoughts. And we have a putting module on the advanced ball striking site, and it's been generally very, very helpful. And for people that just struggle with their putting, I think this is something that's just a very kind of rock solid, pretty good method. The nice thing about it that I like too is if I do practice and if I'm practicing my chipping, well, I'm essentially practicing my putting also. So if I'm practicing chipping, I'm practicing putting. If I'm practicing putting, I'm practicing chipping also because I'm using the exact same technique there. So anyway, that's some thoughts, and I'm just kind of having this video here, these clips just of me rolling these putts, just something to look at while I'm talking here. But you can see that I'm rolling the ball pretty well, making a lot of these putts, and I don't think I would have been able to do that with a more kind of traditional technique that most people are working on, trying to keep the face square and straight back and straight through, and the rocking the shoulders up and down, and no wrists and no lower body movement, and lightweight club with a upright and a whippy shaft and all this stuff. Just didn't really work for me, and I think maybe a lot of other people too. So we've had some of our students have had some great success with this methodology. In fact, even one of my pro friends up here in the Bay Area, Chris Mose, finished top 20 in the British Open one year. A great player, played in the PGA Tour. And I was putting against him just for fun down at his course where he was teaching, and I just we played like 36 holes around the greens. And I just wiped him out, and I don't practice at all. And he was using a long putter or something at the time, and I said, well, try this. And I just kind of showed him the technique, and then he started putting just great immediately with it. And I just handed him the putter, and I said, here, just as a friend, I just gave it to him. And then I can go home and make another one for myself. And then he went out and started, putting great with that thing and winning all the section events and all that stuff. And people were like, hey, what are you doing there? So that's just, some success stories. Now, I know Neil Gascon on our ABS staff was using this technique and cleaning up all the hickory opens and stuff over there. So there's been other good success stories too. So anyway, it's some food for thought. We've got something that might work for some folks, and I just wanted to talk about it a little bit because I haven't talked much about putting, but I'm talking about it now. And I think I'll just wrap it up here, and hopefully, leave some comments and your thoughts. And if you're interested in it, we've got some stuff over on the Advanced Ball Striking forum. Okay, we'll see you soon.